If I've spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I've spoken rightly, why do you strike me? My kingdom does not belong to this world. You say I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. I thirst. It is finished. They speculate that the ancient Persians probably invented crucifixion, but there's no doubt that the Romans brought it to a kind of perfection. The condemned person was made to carry, they think, the cross beam, not the whole cross, but the cross beam, out to the place of crucifixion. And there it was set onto a beam that was already standing. They were stripped naked. That was part of the torture of the cross, was the humiliation of it. And you heard that in the story today, that they crucified Jesus in a very public place, right near the city walls, so people coming and going would see. They fixed them to the cross either with ropes or with nails. There's archaeological evidence of these giant Roman nails that were used. And at that point would commence this literally excruciating pain. So our word for the worst kind of pain, excruce, from the cross. Because as the person would labor to breathe, he'd have to rock up and down on the crucified hands and feet. This would go on for hours or for days in some cases. And when the person died, the body was typically left on the cross to the elements and to the wild animals. Here's the great question, everybody, and it echoes up and down the Christian centuries. Why in the world do we gather here and look intently at that moment? People coming from the ancient world in the time machine, seeing us here in a religious place, gazing at a crucified person, would think we'd lost our minds. Well, can I suggest an interpretation given by Jesus himself? He says, as the serpent was lifted up in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. The reference is to that story in the book of Numbers. Remember, the people of Israel are bitten by these seraph serpents, and many are dying. And Moses is told, make a bronze serpent, put it on a pole, and lift it up, and those who are bitten and look at it will be healed. So the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that we who look at him are healed. Well, what could this possibly mean? Anyone who's been through counseling or therapy or spiritual direction, anyone that's wrestled with fears and anxieties, knows the answer is never found in denying or repressing or running from fears, but rather in what? In looking at them, in seeing them. You know, in the Buddhist spiritual tradition, there's a saying, invite your fears in for tea. See, and the idea is you've thereby disassociated yourself from your fears. Here I am, and there are my fears. In the very act of looking at them, we disempower them. Now, look, everybody, as we're expected to do today, look at that cross. What do we see? Everything that frightens us. Physical suffering, yes, at the limit. Bodily pain, yes. The dissolution of the body, yes. But more than that, humiliation, as I said, false accusation, the effects of cruelty and hatred and institutional injustice. Didn't we just hear that in the Passion narrative? And then death itself, which overwhelms him on that cross. Everything that frightens us, we see in that cross. So we look at it. As the serpent was lifted up in the desert, so the Son of Man is lifted up. But let's keep looking. Let's keep thinking more deeply. Not only is there this kind of psychological liberation in looking at our fears, facing them, but what else do we see in that cross? We see the God who has accompanied us all the way down. Paul says to the Philippians, though he, Jesus, in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God a thing to be grasped, but rather he emptied himself and took the form of a slave, being born in the likeness of men. He was known to be of human estate, and it was thus that he humbled himself, obediently accepting death, even death on a cross. The Son of God, in all his glory, came all the way down into our humiliation, into our physical suffering, into our fear of death, into the effects of false accusation and institutional injustice and cruelty and hatred. God came all the way down. So that now we know, even in our worst fears, that we are accompanied by the divine love. Do you see how in the early days of the church, and it's marvelous as you come across it in the New Testament, they held that up, which was meant to terrify the world. That's how Rome maintained its power, by terrifying the world with that cross. The first Christians held it up as a kind of taunt. You think that scares us? We can look right at it because we know the love of God is more powerful than anything the world can throw at us. See, everybody, that's why they began to use language like redemption, liberation, salvation in connection to that cross. We've been bought back like those who've been enslaved. They've paid the ransom for us. We've been saved, that means healed, by the power of that cross. And that's why today, in the course of this whole liturgy, we're meant to look at the cross, that terrible cross in which all of our fears reside. But we reverence it also as the place of our salvation, because on that cross, God accompanies us all the way down. Sometimes it causes me to tremble.